So a lot of movies and TV shows show the medieval times as being a really exciting time where there were knights in shining armor and huge castles and kings and queens and fancy clothes. But that's not really what it was like. It was actually a really hard life for most people. If you think about it, it was so long ago and there were no lights, no electricity, no heat, nothing like working bathrooms. So, in order to create light when there was dark, they had to light fires. In order to create heat, they had to light fires. Bathrooms were usually holes in the ground. Um, People didn't live as long as they live today because medicine was not the same as what we have today. So most people lived to be around 30 years old, and they got married much younger and they started families much younger. And even the people who had money and lived in the castles, even those castles were very cold places, they were very smelly places. And so life really was not like what they show us in the movies. So the way that things worked at that time were the kings and the queens were in charge and they ruled the land. But because the land was so big, they kind of chose other people who also had money, and those were called lords and ladies, and they split the land up and they gave them to these different lords, and those lords were in charge of the people who lived on the land. And so usually those people were farmers. People had to make their own food, grow their own food, make their own clothes. Houses had to be built by hand. Everything that was done by hand. There were no tools the way that we have them today. Any tools that we had were tools that you make by hand, like shovels and hammers and things like that. And even the people who lived on the land, they didn't get to make any of their own decisions. The people who owned their land decided what they were allowed to do, and they weren't allowed to leave if they didn't like it. So you were basically stuck where you were. And because life was so hard, there was actually another name for the medieval times. It's called the Dark Ages. And so that's really what it was like to live at that time. Maybe you can think of something else that we have today that they didn't have also to help keep them safe and healthy.